We were established in 2012 at a conference in Dakar after a group of people convened in 2010 in exactly this hotel here at Safari Park. I will not introduce Gogla further. I think many of you will have heard of us. If you'd like to know more, if you'd like to become a member, please meet us at the Gogla booth at the exhibition. Very excited to be here today with you. My role is to give you an introduction and then to guide you through the morning process. We'll have an action-packed 3-day agenda. When we were established in that conference in 2012, one of the remarks made in the evaluation, the closing session was, this felt like drinking water from a fire hydrant. And that has become somewhat in our genes. So we have a very full agenda with lots of stuff to discuss and take away for everyone. We will share all the presentations afterwards, and we will have video recording from the opening and closing sessions and a few others. Now, as you may have heard, and you may have noticed from the heavy security, for instance, and other measures, we expect a very special guest today. We hope the event will be opened by His Excellency Mr. Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya. The plan is that he will make his way to the exhibition in a little while and then come here at around 10:30. So until then, we can start our program ourselves. We'll do that by having welcoming notes by Radhika Takar, our Gogla President, and by Mrs. Jumoke Jagun Dokunmu, the IFC Regional Director for Eastern Africa. After those welcoming words, setting the scene for the conference, we'll have a presentation on the next Market Trends report, a report that has been issued with 4 of the previous conferences, so it's the 5th Market Trends report that is coming out. Which will put us all on the level playing field of having the same data and understanding of where the market stands and where we're heading towards. After that presentation, we will focus on the end user impacts and the benefits of off-grid solar for consumers, by having Nabila from CDC interviewing Brave Mahoney and Kat Harrison. And by that time, we expect that the President will have arrived, and we'll start the official opening session where we have Mr. Carlos Felipe Jaramillo, World Bank Country Director, Mr. Charles Keita, Cabinet Secretary, and the President speak and open the session. And after that, we're not done yet. We will continue with a high-level panel session where we will have Mr. Jovan Moroven from ENGIE give a keynote and a panel of 6 industry leaders speaking about the context of the industry. So that is a morning program. Of course, I can't talk here. You couldn't be sitting here if we didn't have the support of many partners and sponsors that made it possible for us to be here. So I'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsors and partners that have helped us come here together in Nairobi for this event. The SMAP team from the World Bank has helped us very graciously with a very early support. A big support that helped us to organize the event. Gold sponsors, Angaza, OPES, B-Box, and Greenlight Planet, please visit their booths. Silver, bronze, smart, content sponsors, other supporting partners. All thank you very much for helping us making this event possible. Hold on. Something is not going entirely here. Another comment I needed to make is that you will have noticed from the media that there's a virus outbreak in China, coronavirus, or COVID-19 as it's called, and some big events have been forced to cancel the event. We expected also quite a number of Chinese participants and Chinese companies to register. So we made our own assessment on whether we were at risk or whether this event could go ahead or not. And we concluded that under certain conditions we could go ahead with this event. We reached out to all the Chinese participants that were planned to come and encouraged them to either make sure that they're being represented here by people that have been out of China for more than 14 days, or being represented by local people, or else to cancel their participation. And a number of companies, and it's not the companies here on my PowerPoint, sorry, that went wrong. A number of companies had to cancel the participation because of the coronavirus. There will be a special booth for these Chinese companies with videos and materials, and I ask you to, encourage you to take a look there and respect their decisions not to come here. But we are, of course, very concerned about your health, so please do stay healthy. We have had sanitizers across the exhibition and the event. Please wash your hands regularly, wash your hands regularly, wash your hands regularly. That's the health advice from our medical advisors. We do not have a policy of no handshakes, but please respect it if people prefer not to shake hands. There is medical advice. Please find it, if you need it, at the Expo grounds in the Paradise Gardens. A couple of logistical remarks. The Wi-Fi network is an open network with SPH. The lunch is in the tent behind the Expo areas, and you will need to show vouchers to get access there. If you haven't already downloaded the app, I would encourage you to do that as the best way to stay in touch with the large community of people that are here. If you have questions, then there's people with orange lanyards that are here from the events team. And the Gogla team can be recognized by buttons, blue buttons, and the Gogla board members can also be found by buttons that mark them. And of course we have social media, hashtags, and Twitter handles in case you'd like to mention on your experience in this event. Finally, we have a big crowd here, but we would like to make it a very interactive event as much as possible and make sure that this event is here for everyone in the room and that you can pose the questions that you'd like to pose. And for that, we have a separate app. It's called Slido. And I encourage you to now take out your phones, go to internet on the SPH network. And, oh, that was a little bit quick. Can you put that back, please, that slide? Slido.do. Can I get the screen back, please, with the slide for the Slido app? And then the code is some technical challenges in the back. The code is #OffGridSolarForum. Now what we ask you to do on Slido is to capture your expectation for the next 3 events in 1 word. And that's not that because it's so important that we hear your word, it's of course very nice, but it's to test whether this can work, because we will use this app throughout the next 3 days, and I think it's important that we check whether it works, and otherwise we'll need to find an alternative approach of becoming interactive. Okay, I think we've given you a few seconds now to find that and try to enter your word. Team in the back, can you put up the Slido app and see if we have a word cloud and whether it worked? Nope. It doesn't seem to be working. That's a little bit frustrating. So we'll need to continue. With that, we'll need to find another way of making this event interactive, but I will now like to pass the floor to Radhika Thakkar from Greenlight Planet and the president of Gogla.
Good morning. I'm a little bit shorter than Kuhn. It's an honor to welcome you all to the 2020 Global Off-Grid Solar Forum and Expo. Thank you. And as we start the 6th edition of this event, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the Minister of Energy from Burundi, the Vice Minister of Energy from Sierra Leone, Cabinet Secretaries, Permanent Secretaries, distinguished guests, and the more than 1,400 representatives of the industry that are here today. That is nearly double the number of people that gathered together 2 years ago in Hong Kong. So we have grown tremendously this year. As we're still early into 2020 and the start of this new decade, for me it's extra meaningful to be here at the Safari Park Hotel, where the second forum of this kind was held exactly 10 years ago in 2010. In fact, the seeds of Gogla were planted right here at this venue 10 years ago, as a few handfuls of people debated the concept of developing an association to represent the needs and the voice of the off-grid industry. Now with more than 180 members, look at how far we've come as an industry. I want to do a quick exercise. Can I ask those of us that were here in 2010 at the Safari Park for what was then called Lighting Africa to please stand up for a moment? Please remain standing for a second. If you can take a look around, I think this is such a powerful visual of the growth of our industry in this last decade. We have really expanded tremendously. Thank you all for playing along. You may take a seat. To put this growth into more concrete terms, our industry has reached more than 280 million people since we last gathered here in 2010, changing more than 250 million lives with access to clean, renewable energy. Today, we know that off-grid solar products such as solar home systems, solar lanterns, and efficient appliances are in high demand. Customers love our solutions. Our Powering Opportunity research shows that more than 90% of households in West and East Africa and South Asia say their quality of life has improved after buying a solar home system. In the next decade, we want these products to reach even more people, especially the 840 million people who remain without access to electricity today. Growing our industry to reach more people and in harder to reach places won't come without challenges. We will need to continue building partnerships with relevant stakeholders, companies, investors, and governments. So where do we go from here? And what do we do this week? It's clear that sustainability and profitability of companies continue to be important areas of focus and discussion in our sector. As a sector, we're doing a lot more work to push the boundaries of how we serve the evolving and expanding needs of our customers with different technology and innovative financing models. And governments around the world are increasingly building strategies for standalone systems in their national electrification plans. We're at a remarkably different place in the path towards universal energy access than we were 10 years ago, but the majority of our mountain still lies ahead. I suggest we use this time together in the next 3 days to collaborate as competitors, as peers, as partners, investors, and policymakers as we dream of what we may accomplish together in the next 10 years. I look forward to engaging in debates and conversations with all of you this week. And with that, I would like to welcome Jumoke Jagun Dokunmo, the IFC's Regional Director for Eastern Africa.
Honorable Charles Skita, Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum, the Minister of Energy for Burundi, the Deputy Minister of Energy for Sierra Leone, Cabinet Secretaries, Permanent Secretaries, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Welcome. It is my honor and pleasure to be here today representing the International Finance Corporation as we return to Nairobi for the 6th convening of the Off-Grid Solar Industry Forum in the city we consider to be the international capital of global off-grid solar industry. In 2009, you all heard 2010 was the second forum in this hotel. In 2009, IFC launched the Light in Africa program in Kenya as a pilot project to develop the market for standalone solar lighting and energy solutions. We worked closely with first mover companies and the sector at large to address barriers to market entry, develop distribution networks, mobilize financing, and generated demand for these new technologies. These activities informed government policies, company strategies and business plans, and drove innovation in technologies and business models. Fast forward 10 years. What do we have today? You all heard Radhika. This global industry has become a 1.75 billion off-grid solar market and has enabled over 400 million people have access to affordable, modern electricity from solar devices. But there's still a lot to do. More importantly, the private sector has demonstrated that with a conducive environment fostered by governments and with support from development partners, the sector can play a pivotal role in attaining universal electrification goals. There is only a 17% market penetration of solar in Africa. That, coupled with the huge need of financing, some say 6 billion, some say more, that's needed to reach universal electrification targets, there are opportunities and there is the need for accelerated investment by the private sector, particularly through financial institutions, local financial institutions, that is. As the sector matures, with financial transparency of firms, strengthened by pay-go platforms, and the industry's bankability, companies' bankability, as earlier also referred to by Radhika, continue to improve, we are bullish about the opportunities to actually expand on this still early stage market. So in the efforts to build a robust market, there is a need to work with local banks across the globe to mobilize the local currency lending that is necessary to fuel the next stage of the market's development. We strongly believe that it is only by crowding in commercial finance at scale that we can reach the target of achieving universal electricity access by 2030. The transformation we have seen in off-grid lighting and household energy is beginning to take shape in agriculture as well. Agriculture sustains, we all know that agriculture sustains the livelihood of well over half of people in Africa. We now see the emergence of a new generation of productive use solar products that can directly stimulate socioeconomic development in rural areas. Solar irrigation pumps and refrigeration have lots of uses in agriculture and also in telemedicine and things like that. These are game-changing opportunities. And if we just look at the agriculture sector, we know that every 10% increase in farm yield results in an estimated 7% reduction in poverty. So, and finally, I will urge you to read the 2020 edition of the Off-Grid Solar Market Trends Report that will come up immediately after my speech. It will track the dynamics of this sector. It will highlight anticipated future trends and also give you a snippet of potential game changers that shows that this industry is well established to help to eliminate energy poverty globally. IFC is honored to have been at the onset of the remarkable off-grid solar market success story, and especially starting here in Kenya. We look forward to the next 3 days with you all, a time to learn from each other, build new partnerships, and Indeed, we like to say, doing good is also good business. So I wish you all the best in your deliberations and in the next 3 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jumoke and Radhika, for welcoming us. You will now need to rush to meet the president at the exhibition ground, so you won't be able to stay with us. But I still wanted to say thanks very much to the World Bank and IFC for partnering with Gogla in producing that next edition of the Market Trends Report, a series of reports that has served as the Bible of our industry, making sure that we all have a good amount of facts and insights available that we can share and can work from and move the needle. So the Market Trends Report should sit in your conference bag, the summary, which is already quite extensive. And it will be introduced now by Caroline Stuit from Vivid Economics and Duda Slavek from Open Capital Advisors. And welcome you on stage. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Duda Slavek, and I'm a principal at Open Capital Advisors and co-lead our energy access practice.
Hi, everyone. This is going to be a bit of a challenge because of our height difference. My name is Caroline Stuit. I'm a senior economist at Vivid Economics, and I lead our energy access practice there.
We are very excited to be here today to launch the 2020 edition of the Market Trends Report with you. As Kuhn mentioned, you should have all received a printout of the executive summary with your packets, and the full report will be available online in just a few weeks. As you know, the off-grid solar industry is extremely dynamic, and much has changed since the last Market Trends Report. It won't be easy giving a full recap in just 20 minutes, but our goal here today is to arm you with the key drivers, lessons learned, and game changers that are driving the industry forward so that these can be the basis for your panels and conversations in the days to come. We often forget how far we've come. In just 9 years, we went from prototypes to selling 180 million units, serving 420 million people. That's really powerful. Applause. This hasn't been without its own challenges in the sector. We've seen, after a period of large growth, a dip in the sector, but we do see renewed growth in 2018 and 2019 as the market has readjusted itself and companies are diversifying their product base. Importantly, we now know a lot more about the non-affiliate market, which represents 71% of the entire market. And for the first time for a Market Trends Report, we conducted a visit to China to learn more about the dynamics of this market. We expect Chinese manufacturers, who form most of the non-affiliates in this space, to become a lot more active directly in both Africa and Asia, and to join the ranks of affiliates in the room today. Now, we just took a look at unit sales, which has been growing at about 10% over the last few years. But what's really exciting to us is to look at revenue growth, which has grown at 30% over the last 3 years. This has been driven by increased sales of PAYGO-enabled products and larger solar home systems. The reason this is really exciting is you'll hear a lot about profitability today and over the coming days, and this increase in revenue growth can really help companies reach profitability sooner. Now, we hit an important milestone, as you can see, in 2017, where the sector hit $1 billion in annual revenues, and we've seen that number rise to $1.75 billion in 2019. Underlying this revenue growth is the actual users we are serving. And what's been really interesting for us is to see increased sales of higher priced PAYGO units has enabled increased access to electricity as well. Today, over half of users receive access to a tier 1 product or higher, meaning that they're having a much better access to electricity. So we just spoke about very strong revenue growth, an increase in tier 1 users, but it's also important to recognize the $1.5 billion in capital that has flown into the sector and helped the sector be where it is today. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But the market potential remains enormous. In 2030, there will be 962 million people that could be using off-grid solar as their primary source of electricity or as a backup to an unreliable grid. In order to serve this market, we estimate that between now and 2030, we will need to raise up to $7.7 billion in capital for companies and up to $3.4 billion in public funding in order to meet the affordability gap. Now, I want to dive a level deeper and talk about some of the key business model and technology trends that have been driving this market. Today, only a handful of companies are profitable. Complex business models and challenging geographies have led to a longer journey towards profitability than most companies and investors had expected. As we know, profitability has been a key theme for the sector the past few years, and there are a few trends that are helping this going forward. First, though many companies had to vertically integrate out of necessity, now new partnerships and innovations across each link of the value chain is enabling companies to specialize and really focus on their core areas of operation, which helps drive profitability. Pay-go technology, declining manufacturing costs, and increasing efficiency of appliances is helping companies be able to sell higher margin systems to their users. New operating models continue to emerge, such as companies moving beyond energy and leveraging pay-go consumer data to provide additional products and services to their consumers. And finally, productive use appliances are emerging, although the sector is still in its infancy, as we will talk a little bit later on. So over the next few slides, I want to dive specifically on affiliate trends in the market, as we have a lot more data on the affiliate market. From a product standpoint, Pico products still dominate. They represent over 83% of unit sales. The Pico market is becoming heavily commoditized and competitive, which means that consumers are having access to an affordable form of a lighting solution. But solar home system is starting to gain traction. While solar home systems only represent 17% of unit sales so far, Pay-go is enabling these products to become a lot more affordable, and we expect solar home systems to drive a lot more sales going forward. Now, geographically, most sales are concentrated in East Africa, and this has been largely driven by the rise of mobile money that once again has enabled Pay-go sales in the region. Although the picture looks very different in Asia, which is the second largest region, and most sales there are actually on a cash basis. West Africa is currently the highest growth region, and that's been enabled by both increase in mobile money in the region and also new partnerships that companies are testing to distribute their products. Now, the sector would not be where it is today without considerable capital flows. Investors have responded to the sector growth with fresh capital. As I previously mentioned, $1.5 billion has been invested to date. While on the graph, you can see a dip in 2019, that's expected due to the cyclicality of companies raising money and also a few large raises by some first-generation companies that get delayed between years. We expect capital flows to rise significantly in 2020 and potentially represent the largest inflow of capital that we've ever seen. Now, geographically, capital flows look a little bit similar to unit sales, and most of the capital is also concentrated in East Africa. East Africa actually represents 60% of all capital that has come into this space so far. This is driven by most first-generation companies that first got established in the region and have a very large presence in East Africa. While West Africa appears to be increasing, most of that capital has actually gone into only 2 companies in the region, and much is the same case in Asia. This means that there is a growing disparity between the ability of first-generation companies and all others to raise capital. In terms of investor types, we've definitely seen a shift through the years. While most of the capital prior to 2016 was put in by VCs and impact investors, they represent a decreasing share of total capital every year since. We've seen increased interest from specialized debt providers, DFIs, and crowdfunding as well, and expect this trend to continue in the years to come. While local bank involvement has remained limited, we do expect local debt to increase, primarily through hedging instruments that now exist in this space, specialized debt providers, and DFIs that are starting to provide local debt to companies. We expect that a key consideration before we see significant increased local bank involvement will be the sector proving more maturity and company profitability.
Now, as Dita was saying, thank you, governments are also increasingly recognizing off-grid solar as a key driver for reaching their universal access goals as the sector is maturing. This graph shows an index of the extent to which governments are now including off-grid solar into their national electrification plans. And we've seen a marked increase of that over the last few years, especially in Western and Central Africa. Most governments in regions with energy access deficits do now include off-grid solar in their national electrification plans. But not only that, the quality of the policy frameworks has also improved. And interesting drivers behind these numbers are, on the one hand, that governments increasingly recognize the value and impact of off-grid solar, but also there is a growing availability of least-cost electrification planning tools. 65% of governments have now implemented duty exemptions or subsidy programs for off-grid solar. And this is a large increase as compared to previous years. And both taxes and public funding are critical components of a favorable enabling environment, which is why I will take a closer look at this in the next few slides. Now, what we've seen is that consumers are highly price sensitive, and this means that taxes act as a real market barrier to market growth. So most countries that have a fast-growing off-grid solar sectors have put in place favorable tax policies. A challenge that we observe is the consistent enforcement of these policies, because even in countries with a well-developed off-grid solar sector and a favorable tax regime, there have been some issues with inconsistent application of policies and interpretation. Now, in terms of public funding, because of the demonstrated impact of off-grid solar, we've seen a marked increase with more and more public funding flowing into the sector over the last few years. Just taking the World Bank as an example, over $800 million has been improved for off-grid solar and energy access technical assistance over the last 2 years alone. And also it has been flowing to an increasing number of countries. And a further $400 million is in the pipeline, in addition to growing availability of public funding from other sources. Now, although electrification has improved a lot over the last few years, especially in Central and South Asia, the market potential in absolute numbers remains enormous. As Duda said, the sector is now serving 420 million users worldwide. However, 840 million people remain without access today. And in addition to that, over 1 billion people suffer from an unreliable grid. And this last customer group is increasingly recognized by the sector as an important part of the off-grid solar market. They typically demand larger capacity systems to provide a better reliability of supply, and also companies are increasingly tapping into this market. This results in a total potential market of 1.8 billion people. In addition to that, there's a growing tremendous potential from productive use solutions and products serving public institutions. A well-known productive use application is dual-use appliances, where households use their TV or fans to generate additional income. But also, there is a growing potential in the agricultural market, with over 70 million smallholder farmers worldwide using off-grid solar, potentially to power their water pumps, cold storage, or post-harvesting processes. And finally, while this is still in its infancy, we see business models emerging that are specifically adapted to serve the public institutions market. Now, as a natural progression in a growing and a maturing market, the growth rate of the market has declined over the last few years, but we still expected off-grid solar to be on a strong growth trajectory, reaching 389 million people with tier 1 off-grid solar products by 2030. However, the future market is much larger than that. Geospatial least cost analysis shows that over 600 people will need to be reached by off-grid solar as their main source of electricity by 2030. This means that an additional 220 million people will need access to off-grid solar. And in addition to that, about 25% of the unreliable grid customers, unreliable grid people are also expected to be on the market as potential customers for off-grid solar. To fulfill this market potential, this means the market will need to accelerate its growth.
And to accelerate that growth, we need to see new game changers in the market. As you know, we operate in a very dynamic industry, and there are many game changers in this space. I'm not going to spend the time going through each one of them, but I do hope you go through them in the documents you now have, as we as an industry need to come together in order to be able to drive these game changers forward. In order to structure game changers, we've displayed them on a matrix, where we structure them from high likelihood to low likelihood, and high impact to lower impact, although we believe all these game changers will be very impactful for the market. In the top quadrants, we have the higher likelihood game changers that we think have a good chance of happening over the coming years, although we still need stakeholder efforts to make them come true. And these range from off-balance sheet financing, which is already starting to emerge in this space, to pay-go availability, which will require the rise of mobile money in areas outside of East Africa to really take off. In the bottom quadrants, we have the lower likelihood game changers, which really need us to come together for them to have any chance of occurring. And these can be tipping points to actually drive sector growth forward. And these range from market-enabling policies and interventions to company profitability. To achieve these game changers, the off-grid solar industry will need substantial capital inflow. As previously mentioned, up to $7.7 billion will be needed in capital to companies. And most of this, as you can see on the graph, is going to be in the form of debt, although there's still substantial equity and grant requirements as well. And up to $3.4 billion will be needed in the form of public funding in order to help reach the poorest households who cannot afford solar products. Now, over the next few slides, Carolyn and I want to speak to specific audiences among you. All stakeholders need to come together in order to drive these game changers. Companies need to prove profitability in order to grow sustainably and drive investor confidence. Profitability underpins the success of the market and has the potential to bring a new wave of funding into this space. Companies also need to continue innovating in order to reach the poorest and hardest to reach households in the sector. We need both new and current investors to come together to help bridge the current investment gap in the space. And there's a few different dynamics that we believe can help bring in new capital into the space. First, a stronger link between climate finance and the off-grid solar sector is needed to enable a new wave of funding. As the off-grid solar sector scales, it is well placed to take advantage of climate bonds that could bring in massive amounts of capital into the space. We also need a greater ability to leverage larger, more traditional asset managers and strategic investors with deep pockets to once again bring increased capital. And finally, as mentioned before, we need an increased access to local currency loans. While in the short run, we believe that hedging instruments, DFIs, and strategic debt providers are filling in this gap, over the next decade, we really need to be engaging local banks and have a sustainable form of local debt in the market.
Thank you. Policymakers, we have a lot of them in the room, luckily today. They will need to continue building strong enabling environments for the off-grid solar sector. And to do that, they need to consider evolving regulations. One of the reasons is that the sector is moving quite rapidly. So policymakers need to take feedback from the private sector into account to avoid the risk of overregulation. And this is already being done in some countries where there are specific task forces that tackle this problem. Also, as as the sector is increasingly offering beyond energy products, regulation of adjacent sectors like the financial or the digital sector will need to adapt as well to avoid avoid hindering the sector. And then similarly, having a policy in place is not enough. We've seen that there's quite some challenges with implementation of these policies on the ground. So policymakers will need to pay specific attention to that. And then finally, we see governments increasingly adopting Lighting Global and other quality standards. And this has helped tremendously in building consumer trust in several of the markets. And we feel that this will need to be continued in the next few years. For donors and governments, there will be an increase, as we've already seen, there is an increased inflow of public funding into the sector, and then another increase will have to happen up to 2030 to close the affordability gap. And the key will be to make the best use of these funds. Well, on the one hand, donors can use supply-side incentives to unlock commercial potential and catalyze markets, especially to support companies to reach remote consumers or households that are in fragile or conflict-affected states. And on the other hand, demand-side subsidies will be needed to bridge the affordability gap and reach the poorest customers a system with affording an off-grid solar device. And then finally, governments and donors can provide technical assistance to especially the local implementing entities to support them with successful implementation of the policies. Now, to conclude, we just told you about the actors for the 4 different stakeholder groups: companies, investors, governments, donors. And the off-grid solar sector has made tremendous progress, but if you think back to the earlier slide that I showed you on the market potential that is still remaining, this can only be unlocked if each of you is making their own contribution. And in the audience today, we have representatives of all stakeholder groups, and each of you has a vital role to play for the sector to mature in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline and Duda. I think that was a very helpful overview of giving us the facts on the sector as a whole. This sector, of course, is made up of individual sales of off-grid solar products to end users, millions of them, hundreds of millions of them. And the sector wouldn't exist if we didn't understand well enough what these sales mean. And to put a bit of more spotlight on that, I'm inviting Nabila Khan from CDC to interview Kat Harrison and Brave Mahoney on what the off-grid solar products mean for the end users. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Koen. So we're honored and excited to be part of the opening session with highly esteemed guests. So I have the privilege to speak to you today about development impact of this industry at the customer level, a topic that's very close to my heart. At CDC Group, which is the UK government's Development Finance Institute, I lead the impact practice for energy access and resource efficiency, and I also co-chair the impact working group for GoGlow. I am honored to share the stage with our 2 speakers who will provide us with a deeper insight into the impact of this sector. Brave Mahoney brings personal experience of living off-grid. Brave started working as a field officer for Solar Aid Sunny Money, educating the community on the use of solar products, before working his way up to being general manager of Solar Aid Sunny Money, Malawi. Through Kat Harrison, director of 60 Decibels, we have years of experience in impact research of off-grid energy, and I think a passion really of focusing on the end user voice. Welcome both. So I'm going to begin with a question for Brave. We'll start light, and then we'll work our way up. Why are off-grid energy solutions critical in these markets?
Hello. Thank you very much. One thing I've learned in the past 14 years that I've been in this sector is that off-grid solar solutions or energy solutions, they bring beyond business as usual. Off-grid solar solutions, they act as the catalyst for human development. If you look at UNDP, they are measuring human development index by looking at the progress that individuals make on 3 dimensions. That is long and healthy life, education and knowledge, and finally support living a decent. If you look at these 3 key dimensions, off-grid solar solutions are directly touching on each one of them. We'll start with long and healthy life. If someone is not using kerosene or candles or dry cell batteries for lighting up their homes, obviously they're reducing exposure to some poisonous substances that can affect their life. I've been in this situation myself. I have used kerosene to study. Waking up in the morning, you find lots of dark stuff in your nose. It's not nice. Having problems to breathe, all those like healthy problems that you get associated with using such kind of like lighting devices. So by giving people access to clean energy, even a basic solar lantern, it makes such a huge difference on their life. In terms of education or knowledge, I'm privileged to be part of the schools campaign program that Sanemani started 2012, I think. And we have worked very closely with head teachers and students who have been using our lights to prepare lesson plans, students using for preparing the exams. So the impact that has had on their life is so huge. We have so many individuals out there who can come and really tell the crowd that my life has changed. I have passed my exams because I've been using this green light. I can read properly with this light. So many examples. And likely enough, there is one student who went to the university, and now he has performed really well for using the solar products, and he really wants to be in the sector. So he contacted me, and he wants to do internship program with us because he wants to pay back what he has gained from this sector. So these are like typical life-changing examples that are out there. And decent living standards, I mean, everyone needs money to have comfortable life. Without money, you can't really say you've got quality life. And off-grid solar solutions, they expose people to new businesses. They expose people to new jobs. People are saving money that they used to spend on buying kerosene or batteries or dry cells. Now it's like it's the biggest product competing with Pico Solar on the market. It's dry cell powered torches. And by being involved in the distribution or in the whole value chain, people are earning a living out of it. So their life gets improved because they are getting income from being involved in the value chain. So these are the 3 key dimensions that I would like to share with the public and how off-grid solar is really impacting on people's lives. Thank you.
And Brave, you've spoken about the customer experience, but as someone who's lived off-grid themselves, you've also had the personal experience. So any personal story to share with the group?
Yes. I remember in 2008, after I volunteered to set up Sanimani in Malawi. At that time, I was doing my secondary school as well. And my passion then was to be a medical doctor. I really worked hard to be a medical doctor because it's one of the jobs that I think it has a direct impact on people's lives. So I wanted to do something that really has direct impact on people's lives. And when I'll mention his name, David Giluli, who was the volunteer of Solar Aid, Sanimani, shared with me the benefits of switching to solar and how it will help to develop people's lives. I was really convinced that this is another way of having impact on people's lives than just being a medical doctor. And in the same period when this Solar Aid started recruiting people, I was offered to study at Malawi Health Sciences. Only 20 of us were picked across the country. So it was quite challenging to start with biomedical sciences, something that I really liked to do. But also I spent a lot of time thinking through the future of off-grid solar solutions that David Giluli shared with me. And looking at it very closely, I kind of convinced myself that by being part of this solution, I will stop the problem from happening rather than solving the problem at the end when someone is sick. So I kind of like thought through along those lines, and I got offered the place, as I said. So I had to make a decision, either to go and do something that I spent years preparing for, or leave all that and start something fresh that I have no idea where it's going to end. But I think I have some kind of like entrepreneurship trends in me, so I thought like, okay, I'll take this risk. I'll take this risk. And I started helping Dave Giluli to set up Solar Aid and Sanimani in Malawi, training youth groups into assembling solar products. Then we didn't have the products that we have today on the market, so we used to do local assembly, wooden frames, you know, putting panels in there, batteries, LEDs, all those things, and then having like assembly groups in the villages, and also managed to work with other groups as sales and a distribution network. So that's how it all started. So why I was really in this sector was because of what I went through myself. I saw people dying because, actually this is a really sad story, because in one area, a grandma died because she was bitten by a snake, you know, because he went to bed without seeing where to sleep. So the snake was there, he didn't see it. So she didn't see it, and she ended up being bitten, and in the morning she was found dead. People wanted to find that it was a snake bite. So like, those things clocking in my mind, it was like, no, I have to do something on this. So that's why I ended up being with Solar Aid, so as field officer, and then started studying business. Yeah, today.
Thank you, Brave. I mean, that's quite a powerful imagery to have of the impact in action. Kat, I come to you. How does this compare to what you're seeing more broadly in the sector?
Yeah, well, the happy news is it's not just Sunny Money customers and Brave whose lives are getting better with solar. We found that nearly 9 in 10 of the off-grid energy customers we've talked to said their quality of life had improved as a result of having their solar home system, their solar lantern, their solar TV. And just for context, we talked to 25,000 of them, representing nearly 50 off-grid energy companies. So I'm quite confident that that's a win for the sector. And families really talked about better light, reliability, and convenience. They mentioned reduced spending and increased income, and they told us of health improvements and well-being the products brought to their lives. And for the vast majority of the customers, it's their first time having access to this product, this solar product. And I know that impact measurement often sounds hard work and not so relevant for many companies, apart from maybe to attract those impact investing dollars. But the great thing is customer impact really is synonymous with customer value proposition, and that's something all of us understand and care about. The better we serve our customers, the more likely we are to have a bigger impact, to scale and grow, and to reach more people. And the sector on a whole is doing a great job at serving customers. For those familiar with the Net Promoter Score, so customer satisfaction, the off-grid energy sector has a 45 score, which is pretty average globally across the world for all other sectors. And just quickly diving in at different subsectors, we found some really interesting patterns as well. So the impact index we created we found that solar lanterns had the biggest impact of the different subsectors. So although they give more basic energy access, it's really transformative for families' lives. Solar home systems were doing well across the board, which really represents all the progress and maturity in the last 10 years. And solar appliances are a great new contender for making really positive changes in people's lives. So lots to celebrate for all of the impact of the work that everyone in this room contributes to.
Okay, that is some very large figures that you've shared with us. Now, my question is, if there truly is this level of credible impact, proven evidence that, you know, companies, investors, others have been driving towards, is our work done then? What further is needed? And I ask you both that.
I'll jump in. I think we've seen what's on there, what's out there. The report has kind of shed more light on the amount of work we still have to do. We are not done. We are not done. There are so many opportunities in this sector. There are so many possibilities that we can do in this sector. And the solutions that were provided so far, I think they're just tapping into a portion of what's out there. So we need to do a lot. I also really concur with the outcome of the report. It's something that we see on the ground, on things that we need to do as sector players. There are three things that I have kind of like concluded, on things that we really need to share with others. First thing is to continue with innovation, learn and share. The possibilities that are coming out, we need to understand them better and see how they can be interlinked with other opportunities. So innovation is key. We need to continue innovating, and not just from the boardroom level or from the laboratory level. We need to be on the ground. This takes me to the second point of action. We really need to understand the consumer. We need to put the consumer at the center stage of developing our business models, our financing strategies, policy. We need to really understand what does the consumer really need. Because sometimes it's also very easy with all this push and the wave that is in the sector to forget about what the consumer really needs and look more into what our skills and capacities are forcing us to do. So we really need to understand what the consumer really needs. If we do that, we can then innovate and develop models that really respond to that need. And finally, it's strategic partnerships. I think that also come in the report. We should really understand the skills of each other in the sector, where we are good at, and how we can leverage on others, tapping into what they're already doing, so that within the little resources that we have, we're able to amplify the results. So partnership is key, understanding the consumer is key, and innovation, continuous innovation is very, very important. We're talking of 840 million people out there, and 10 years from now, we'll be talking of deadline of SDG 7. I mean, we can't sleep. We have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, so obviously I agree. I think there's so much to celebrate where we've come from, but SDG is 10 years away and there's lots more to do. By happy coincidence, I too have three things I would love to share reflecting on the customer perspective around who are we serving, how well are we serving them, and what else is going on. So in terms of the who, we found that just over a third of off-grid energy customers live below the poverty line. That's relative to 60% in the countries in which they're living in. So to ensure we're not leaving anyone behind, we need to find ways to be more representative and ensure that we're serving those lower income families. Some of the ways to do that are lower spec products, longer loan terms, more flexible financing. That will likely help us get a little bit closer. But of course, these strategies come with financial implications for companies. And it's unlikely a market-based approach alone is going to get us towards universal energy access. So we're going to need smart subsidies, grant funding, and innovative ideas. In terms of how well we're serving customers, and this is the thing I worry about, a third of the customers we talked to said they'd experienced challenges using their energy product or service. Two-thirds of them hadn't had that resolved, and poor customer service is one of the top complaints of customers who are unhappy. And what's key here is that customer challenge rates have both an impact and a business implication. If a family has a solar home system in their home, they can't use it properly, they can't experience the benefits, and they're probably not going to go and tell their friends and family how great it is, so it may affect demand and uptake. So I think it's something we really need to focus on. And then lastly, what else is going on? We're only starting to understand the negative impacts of all the incredible financing at a customer level that's coming in. And so far, that over-indebtedness is experienced by a small proportion of customers, but it's really significant, so it's really important that we get right. And there's some great work already ongoing by Gogla with the consumer protection principles. So I'm really excited to see where we move with that and how we can all contribute to it.
Great, thank you both. I guess as a final word from you both, if we're moving towards universal access, I'd like to know, what does the future look like where everyone has access to clean, affordable energy?
Thank you very much. I think if everyone has access to clean, affordable energy, it will mean quality life. It will mean more people getting access to proper quality education. It will mean people being able to have stable income, which will also help to improve their disposable income, which eventually will result to quality life as well. And touching on the same, it will create more possibilities as well. Because we're talking of selling more solar products, making sure people have got access to good quality products. But we should also be thinking of how do we bring those products back when they are dead, which again creates another opportunity. It's a different topic altogether, which creates lots of opportunities for people. So what I'm saying is, by giving everyone access to clean, renewable energy, it opens huge opportunities. It opens huge possibilities. It creates a better life for everyone, and that's what we want. I mean, that's what government wants, to see the citizens living top quality life. So off-grid solar sector has a huge role to play to achieve that.
Incredible. Kat?
Yeah, that future looks clean, it looks bright, it looks happy. Actually, I just want to share one of my favorite customer quotations from a lady in Sierra Leone, Easy Solar's customer. She said, "When there is light, my house is filled with joy and laughter." Who wouldn't want to live in a world like that and contribute to it? But more seriously, this future would mean a productive day is not cut short, that families are safer from avoiding polluting or dangerous kerosene lamps. And there's increasing opportunities for families to earn income and generate income from their energy access.
Thank you both very much. I mean, that's a pretty powerful call to action for all of us. I think it's particularly helpful to position customer centricity within the business model, within the financial considerations that I suspect many of us here are thinking about. So thank you for that. To all those in the room, I hope you found that an insightful discussion. One of the things I do want to flag to you is that within the Impact Lounge, there are copies of 2 newly launched impact reports, which I highly encourage you all to review. There is the Why Off-Grid Energy Matters by 60 Decibels, and then the Gogla DFID Powering Opportunity.
very much, Nabila, Brave, and Kat. We learned that we have actually a bit of extra time because the president is a bit delayed in his plans. What I'd like to ask you is Duda and Caroline to come back, and also Nabila and Kat and Brave to come back, because we have then some time to take questions from the floor. And I think you might have many that you otherwise would have had to say for the panel, but now that you're here, then let's use some time to ask some questions from the floor. There should be people with roving microphones around for every block of seats. Take a seat. So who would like, who has a question on the for the people that you just heard this morning around the market trends report, about the data that you got that you'd like to ask? And I know I just should stay quiet here and count to 7, because questions will come. I'm sure there will be many burning questions on the market trends report. I have there the first one, the starter. We have a microphone for the gentleman over here. The gentleman in the light jacket. Were there roving microphones, please?
It was really great to see that you've included in the latest report, this is Duda and your colleague, it's great to see that you've included in the latest report the estimates for the non-Google member markets, the black portion, the graphs.
Okay. Can you state
your
name?
My name's Mark Hankins.
I thought that I know that, but not everyone might have known that. Hi, Mark.
Yeah, so it's great to see that was included. That's the first time that you've done that, and I think the Google non-members are also playing a really huge role in the market. And when it comes to quality, the Google members tend to address quality better. Did your report, and maybe I missed it, but did your report have recommendations for helping to finance these smaller, say, what we call the over-the-counter players, but non-Google members, and how we can bring the non-Google members into the fold?
Hello, can everybody hear me? Just to clarify, was your question around how to finance the non-affiliates? Bring them into the fold. Yeah, so I think one of the things we found out, especially when we conducted our trip to China, is that there's a lot of interest among Chinese manufacturers and these non-affiliates to become more involved in the market. It's unfortunate that a lot of them weren't able to attend the conference, but I think there's a couple of different dynamics at play. Lighting Global has actually had someone in China for the past 2 years and is starting to work with a lot of these manufacturers, and a lot of them are actually starting to seek affiliation with Lighting Global in order to get their products verified. And a lot of the products, it is true that there's a sense that some products might be lower quality and cheaper, but there's also really high quality products that are manufactured in China. So I think one is kind of understanding this market better, and you'll have a lot more information about that in the full report, in addition to what you currently have in the executive summary, so that we can display some of the myths about, the quality of these products and actually start cooperating and working with them more. Obviously, a lot of the distributors in the room today already work with Chinese manufacturers, and a lot of their products are being produced in China. But I think there is an interest in them coming in and actually having more of a presence here and distributing products directly. So I think it's up to us as a community. We know that there's room for everyone and we can't do this alone. So to really embrace that and try to work towards really affordable, high quality products all together.
Thank you very much. I see a hand over there. The gentleman in the green shirt. Oh.
My name is Yongo Mashangao from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I would like to ask the question, because we are manufacturers here, donors, investors, about the management of all these defective products, solar products, or when the products reach the end of their life cycles. What are we planning here for the management of these as far as the protection of the environment is concerned? Thank you.
You want to take that question, Duda?
Sure. So I think the question you're asking is really around e-waste management of products, right? So after they are reached a life cycle, what happens to the products? And I think that's a really important question that we as a sector, I think, are just starting to tackle that. And it's happening both from the company side, where a lot of companies are starting to put e-waste policies within their procedures, but also a lot of governments are
technical innovations, operating models, and productive uses. I really wanted to drill down on new operating models that you're seeing. What does beyond energy service mean? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, happy to. So what we mean by beyond energy is a lot of companies are actually thinking themselves as more of a financing company, a consumer financing company, than necessarily an energy company. So they started off, especially with Paygo, they now understand a very large consumer base that they're selling solar home systems, Pico lanterns to. And now what they've seen is that they can actually expand that, and because of their understanding of that market, sell other products. So some companies are testing education loans, just additional financing products, and really becoming more of either like a distribution or a financing company in the space. So that's one of the interesting business models that we've seen.
Thank you. Over there. Yep.
Hi, I'm Shazia Khan. I'm from Eco Energy. I've got a question for Caroline and Dutta. You guys talked about the gap in the sector and how much money we're going to need in order to reach those people that are under-electrified or off-grid completely. One of the suggestions that you had was climate finance. I would love for you to elaborate a little bit more on that. At Eco Energy, we've just started investigating carbon finance. We've been now approached by a couple of firms that specialize in this, but I would love to hear more about how we as a sector can tap into this funding, and I don't know if Gogla has any plans to see if they can build out an initiative around the climate finance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, thank you for that. I think I don't necessarily have a direct answer for you, because I think that's one of the areas in the space that we see a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of climate money out there. There's a lot of climate bonds, there's carbon credits, and I don't think we've necessarily as a sector been able to come together and figure out how can we leverage this, right? There's a lot of intersections. Solar home systems can decrease carbon footprint, and I think it's often two different industries that operate very differently, and there are a couple of companies, a couple of industry actors that have started to look into this as you have, so it'd be great to also have a conversation afterwards and understand more of that. But looking at the massive investment gap that we have, we need to look beyond just this room of people and figure out how can we actually bring in new, fresh capital into the space. So that's why we think that is a really large potential there.
Does it answer your question? Because as Gogla, we're looking at it, but it's early stage, and it's a bit, as Duda say, matching the language, matching the terms is a challenge. But as the industry is developing and asking for larger sums of money, I think the time is right to start thinking about that and start that conversation. I see, I don't know where the microphones are right now, but I see a hand over there. The microphone is over there. Then it will come to you afterwards. Over there. Is the mic not working? Is there a working microphone for the gentleman? If you can hold it, there's... How many microphones do we have? There's somebody with a working microphone in the corner, also not working. All the microphones stopped working. That's not very handy. Oh, there's a working microphone for the gentleman over there. And then there, and then there.
Thank you. My name is Paul Mbuthi from the Ministry of Energy, Kenya. I was happy to listen to the trends in the off-grid solar system, market, and I'm just wondering regarding the productive use appliances. We tend to see clean cooking and solar cooking, for that matter, seems to be lagging behind. And I wanted to just get a perspective from yourselves. How do you see the market for clean cooking regarding the applications on solar? Because your report indicated that a lot of activities are concentrated in East Africa. And we have seen the trend is like lighting has been the major thing. How about using solar for cooking, and how do you see the market trends taking up in the years to come?
Solar for cooking, question that gets a lot of attention.
I think that's a really good question, and admittedly, the report was very much focused on the lighting sector and not in the cooking sector. But if you look at, in order to achieve SDG 7 and universal access, SDG 7 actually includes both clean cooking and solar lighting for all. So I think this is another situation where oftentimes we're all within the same environment, and a lot of companies are actually doing both clean cooking and solar lighting products, but we often talk about these separately. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know when you look at investments to date in clean cooking, that number is only a fraction of what has actually come into the solar lighting space. So I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done there. I know there's a couple of players in the sector that are really trying to drive that forward. I agree on something that we need to increase the conversation here in order to understand how can we actually look at both of these sectors together and try to achieve all of SDG 7.
Yeah, just from the productive use perspective, I mean, what we tend to see is that people need a foundational level of energy access in their homes to serve their families and their own needs. And I think particularly for cooking, we're not quite there yet, where people sort of feel they have surplus or excess that they can generate income from it.
Okay, I'll take the two questions, the two hands that I saw, and then we'll move on to the next program element. The gentleman in the light shirt there, and then the gentleman in the corner. Can we have a microphone here to the gentleman in the light shirt in that block? Oh. Can you pass the microphone? Or, thanks.
Good morning. My name is Marian from Grabowski from Responsibility Investments. And my question is concerning the fundraising. And you mentioned that there's a gap between first and second generation companies in the market, and that the divide has been increasing. And my question would be, what are the key drivers? Is it like track record? Is it the turnover? Or are there other factors to be considered?
Hello? Okay. Yeah, also really good question. And I think if you ask a lot of, the non-first generation companies in the room, they'll probably say the same thing. I think there's a lot of different factors that drive that, and it might be good to also get more of an investor opinion. But I think some of that is first mover advantage. So obviously we call them first generation companies as they were the first affiliate companies in the space, and really were able to prove more of a track record and establish themselves in markets, and that's where initial investors went to, and now investors are even more concerned about seeing financial sustainability and profitability and are very much drawn to the same companies, while second, third generation companies have had a harder time being able to prove themselves. We also see that there was a lot of equity available in the space originally, and that went to the first generation companies. Equity has dried out, and there's been more debt in the space, and debt, by just description of it, would look for companies that are further along. So without a lot of equity investors are still tied up in the initial companies they invested in, there's a lot less equity in the space and grant as well that can go into these companies that are still trying to prove their business models in order for them to scale. So I think those are a couple of the different dynamics in it.
Nabila?
I mean, very little to add to that. I mean, outside of, I think, you're looking at follow-on investments, the balance between equity and debt, absolutely right, and the diversification of business models as well, which is a big driver towards financial sustainability, as we've seen.
Thank you very much. I take one more question because I just got notice that the president is on his way.
My name is Thomas Duvaux with the Access to Energy Institute, and I'm a little bit worried about one thing. On the one hand side, we know the industry is growing in terms of numbers of systems, and then I look at the equity and debt, which is virtually stagnating since 2016. And I think as much as I would want to believe that climate finance money is coming in, I think we need to talk about the 0.5 to 3.4 billion bracket of subsidies more openly, because I think this subsidy will not only be needed for the people in North Kenya, but for people who we think don't need that subsidy. And I look at all these companies in the room, and being next Mobisol, I think we will need more of that for the sector to strive. And the reason is we're talking infrastructure. And where I come from, infrastructure is something which is a public good. And we expect East Africans to pay for the infrastructure, CapEx, for the OpEx of using it, and to give a return to investors. And I don't think that's going to work in the medium term.
To say could not agree more. Since you brought this up for free marketing, we are doing a panel later on Leave No One Behind. And I think a lot of the conversations we've had so far around the conference and even yesterday have been around this issue of subsidies. And I think it's a very important issue that we as a sector need to be able to tackle in order to figure out how do we leave no one behind. So I'd encourage everybody to continue those conversations going forward. But well said.
Yep, and I can only agree, and that's why we've staged conversations around those topics about public funding and about equity raising in the program. Thank you. With that, I think we'd like to close this Q&A session. Thank you very much, panelists. I said the president is on his way. He's not quite here, and I think we have time to move up one of our elements of the program. Mr. Moroven from ENGIE. We're very glad to have you here. ENGIE in the last 2 years purchased 3 companies in this industry, really launching themselves on the stage as a significant player, as a strategic investor that has a view on the market. We're really pleased to have Mr. Moroven, the CEO Africa for ENGIE, available to shine a light for us on why ENGIE decided to purchase these 3 companies and what their plans are with their investments. Joven, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be speaking here today, especially as an African fellow. ENGIE has over 50 years of experience on the African continent, and we're here to stay. I hope for another 50 years and hopefully longer. So as a business, we have a long-term commitment to off-grid solutions, and I'm going to share that a bit with you. So we believe in Africa's potential as promising, dynamic, and innovative continent with a growing thirst for efficient energy solutions. As you all know, more than 600 million people do not have access to electricity. So that's more than 60% of the current population living in sub-Saharan Africa. Yet that population is about to double in the next 30 years. And out of these doubling of population, nearly half of them is going to live across cities. So just imagine what it means in rural areas, but also in peri-urban areas, if they were to get access to reliable energy, water supplies, clean water supplies, irrigation, and so on. We believe that we have a pivotal role to play in industrializing and scaling up the off-grid solar industry. Advances in decentralized energy put universal access within distance, but the challenges that remain are still significant. So many people are very surprised when we talk about off-grid sector, and we talk about the fact that it is less than 10 years old. Yet it has already delivered quality energy services to hundreds of millions globally. At ENGIE, this is what we saw. We saw the massive potential of the off-grid electrification sector as a way to bridge energy gaps across Africa, more speedily and cheaply. Universal access in Africa would not be possible through only one mode of electrification. Currently, the main grid serves 96% of the people receiving electricity in sub-Saharan Africa, but it doesn't reach a lot of less densely populated people, and also it is not reliable. Three game changers are enabling this radically different energy approach. First, a rapid decrease in technology cost. Second, greater energy efficiency, making it possible to power multiple appliances with a limited supply of energy. And third, the digital revolution. So mobile communication technology is facilitating payments and monitoring as well as efficient data management. A promising new dimension is to expand the business model beyond electricity provision, moving towards an as-a-service approach to respond to multiple essential customer needs. This could link energy access to other products and services. For example, water supply, internet access, appliances, clean cooking, and financial services and products. ENGIE's approach has been to start with the development of in-house mini-grid solutions, leveraging on productive uses to drive improvements for populations and business profitability. So with ENGIE Power Corner, we are unlocking the economic potential of rural populations in sub-Saharan Africa by providing clean, reliable, affordable electricity through smart grids, mobile money, and pay-as-you-go. This model's great advantage is that it creates economic activity, stimulating entrepreneurship, and generally improving life conditions in villages, in particular through the electrification of health centers and schools. Increase mini-grid usage, boost local economies. Working with local players is also central to our business model, and we are notably partnered with local NGOs to precisely tailor the productive uses and develop a network of entrepreneurs. We're very proud that this includes female entrepreneurs and sows the seeds for extra resources of revenues, including activities linked with agriculture, water distribution, internet services, and even electric vehicles. That reflects our approach for all businesses. So solutions by Africa, for Africa. In course of our work over the years, we have come to see that public funding and public utilities alone cannot bear the investment cost needed by off-grid. The private sector has an important role to play as well. Our intention is to gain scale quickly. One promising option when we talk about mini-grid is a result-based financing, a scalable, smart, result-based financing program like the Universal Electrification Facility, currently developed by the Shell Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, and the African Mini-Grid Developers Association. Concerning solar home systems, ENGIE's approach has been to enter the market and accelerate through acquisition. With Phoenix, our approach started by inclusiveness. Phoenix Solar Home System offer allows to target low-income population and give access to a wide range of appliances. Rural customers are hard to reach and expensive to serve also, and they are subject to disruptions due to their unstable income. ENGIE uses predictive analytics to lend to those who previously lacked financial services. We study behaviors and accompany our customers so they can take charge of their financial lives and move up the energy and financial ladders. By acquiring Mobisol, we complemented the range of our solar home system solutions to move from inclusiveness to productive usage. Through a higher capacity, consumer gets access to modern energy services and productive use appliances to establish their own solar-powered small businesses. Technology is key for off-grid. To offer the best service, we deploy our own software suites. It provides a central point of reference for system performance, payment schedule, and customer-related information. We're actually able to provide it externally for any business in need of a completely integrated pay-as-you-go platform. We believe that the solar home system model needs to scale up in order to be sustainable and bring cash injections. This is also an important question to be asked about credit risk and how this can be closely controlled and mitigated. Combining domestic and productive usages will help to strengthen this approach. In general, for off-grid, ENGIE welcomes more conducive policy, regulatory, and also investment environment across African countries. A fundamental starting point is the implementation of master plans that clearly identify electricity needs. Going forward, our ambition for access to energy is to scale and industrialize the model across several countries, combining our varied range of solutions. How do we make that? What does a group like ENGIE really bring to the access to energy sector? Well, we think we can bring a solid and financially sound approach to accompany the sector towards the next stage, instilling the financial discipline to deliver results. In terms of development of business in Africa, there are of course some lessons that have been learned and pointers for the future. In every business that I've been involved in, you always learn from failures. Some businesses take more time to deliver. These businesses will definitely take longer to make money and have a bigger impact. The business model still needs to be proven, and that is what we will do when it comes to access to energy. It also needs to be industrialized and scaled up. I believe this is where our company added value lies. Our differentiator is being able to look to each market and ask where we can develop a platform that is different from others. Access to energy should be self-funding and growable. This route to scale is invaluable in order for Africa to move forward at the dynamic pace that it needed. Africa will find its solution. In fact, Africa is already driving forward its solution. As a company, we're here to enable this incredible journey to economic transformation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moroven. We will continue with our panel, so I invite you to stay on stage, actually. As it turns out, the President is still a bit further away than we had hoped. Things as they are, I can't really help that. Can I ask for some more seats on stage, and can I ask the other panelists to join me on stage? So besides Mr. Moroven, I'd like to invite Leslie Marancola from Ngaza, Itocha Nyagi from IFC, Mr. Joseph Nyoroga from the Principal Secretary from the Ministry of Energy. I hope you're here. I haven't seen you yet. Mansour Hamayan from BBOX and Rose Mutiso from Mawazo Institute. Rose, are you in the room? I hope so. Please take a seat. Let me take a seat in the middle. Yeah, take that one. Yeah, I'll take this one. We need one more chair. And hopefully Rose will join us. Rose, come on stage. So we need to improvise a little bit, given the timing challenges that we have. We'll need to find out how much time we have for this panel discussion. But let's take the time that we have for a panel discussion with, I think, a really intriguing set of panelists, a very inspiring group of people around me. I'd like to start with a gentleman here next to me, Mansour Hamayan, CEO of Bbox. Bbox, manufacturer for solar home system as well as mini-grids. Presenting yourself as a bit of a platform company, active in many different countries, and have been in the news frequently last year with successful fundraisers. Mansour, your view on the market trends. I think you might have views particularly on the topic of profitability, and to what extent it's a challenge for the industry to demonstrate profitability, and why that is more of an issue right now than it was a few years ago. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Thank you, Cohen, for that. From my perspective, I think it's a very exciting time that we live in. I've been attending the Gogla Lighting Global event since the first one in Dakar in 2011, I think it was, or 2012. And the industry has grown a lot. And I think the trends report show that pay-as-you-go industry is not just an East Africa thing, but it's become a more Pan-Africa thing. It's expanded not just from Africa, but it started to go into Asia as well. And the business models around IoT, mobile money, and the foundations of running a distributed business is now actually getting into different segmentations, both from like upfront sales model to CNI. And that's super exciting to see. At the same time, the technologies have improved rapidly, from battery costs to solar, all the stuff that you guys know. In general, the unit economics have improved quite a bit. But the customer expectations have increased, right? So suddenly now we are in the business of not just providing energy access, but actually solving energy poverty. And that question about how do you lift people out of energy poverty is in terms of providing people with enough power. And their expectation, our customers' expectations are modern ones. They want to have TVs, they want to have radios, increasingly number wants to have fridges, etc. And they want to be able to have that at a price point that's affordable. And that's quite exciting to see, and the technology is allowing that sort of transition to take place. But for a company like Bbox, and we have raised well over $150 million to date, the sad reality is this, is that we still haven't electrified any single country we are in, right, 10 years into it, or collectively. The work still has to be done. And expansion is very expensive. And the problem is not regional, it's a global problem. And it needs to unlock billions of dollars of capital. And that's, for me, why profitability is such an important thing, because for us as a business to actually unlock the next level of capital, not just being profitable on a unit level, but the company level, is essential to actually scale up and provide the sort of risk return that the investors require. And my final point on the outlook of the sector, I think one of the big things that we're seeing is the convergence between many different business models into one, right? So one of the traits of the earlier first generation companies was that we did everything at the same time, right? We had to become the manufacturing business, the distribution business, the financing business, frankly, because no one else wanted to do it. But what's happening now is the fact that partnerships and specialization is happening across that value chain as well. So that burden of electrifying the world no longer stands on a single company, but on a set of partnerships. And I think that's something that's really exploded over the last 2 years, is the number of partnerships and the new players emerging and specializations happening in the value chain. Thank you.
Thanks, Mansour. So basically, you've taken the priorities and topics for the entire panel now, I think. You talked about aspiring customers and how they, once they have an entry-level product, their expectations go up, and how we need to meet them with affordable products. So affordability is another topic that you mentioned. You mentioned that there's still no single country that has achieved the targets, and that hence we need to find measures to stimulate growth. But you also talked about profitability and the need for profitability. And one question that came up in my mind is our tension between that. For you as an individual company, that you need to focus on profitability first, does that mean that you can focus less on growth? And does that mean we need more B-boxes, more green light planners, more D-lights, those kind of companies in the space? Or is that a stage that we need to go through before the bigger players in the industry can pick up growth again?
My personal view is this, is that the bigger companies have to grow much bigger, but have to turn themselves into more of a platform and help the next generation of companies to do what we did quicker. So we are trying to do that by selling hardware, software, investing into companies, and also trying to provide a training and service to accelerate market development. So I think it's a combination of things, but developing things from scratch today makes no economic sense, right? I really would encourage that we need more partnership throughout that value chain and really take advantage of what people have. Telecoms are becoming energy companies, traditional utilities are becoming off-grid, banks are becoming asset financiers. There's a whole new era of things going on, which I think we really can take advantage of to try to accelerate development. And I think that's the solution to solving the balance between profitability and growth, is not doing everything everywhere yourself alone.
Thank you very much. So this afternoon, I think I can expect you either at the session on partnerships or on the grounds making partnerships.
I'm everywhere.
Yeah.
I will be there.
Itoja, I'd like to continue with you. I think you are one of the guys standing up. You've been in the industry for a long time. You've seen this develop as over years as the lead of the Lighting Global program from the World Bank and IFC. What are the things that stand out for you that you want to highlight?
So thanks, Koen. And yeah, you're right. I was one of the few people who are standing here today amongst the ones that were here in 2010. And so I think there's been tremendous growth. And I think in my view, I would really say that strategy in terms of policy has been a big thing. I think when we started off the industry in 2010, 2009, I think governments had it really embraced. I think the role that off-grid solutions can play in terms of accelerating energy access. And I think today we see really quite a number of countries that have embraced that. I think Kenya stands as a unique example, and there are quite a number of others that have embraced that. So I think we've come a long way, and thanks to many things. Yeah. So I think in 2009, the nature of the products that we're having is very dramatically different from what we have here. So I think business models have changed, the products have changed. We now have products that can really provide a household energy as a solution. Yeah. So whatever you need, I think you can, in terms of energy, you can get it. And I think I would say that the understanding where everybody looked at electricity as connecting your house with the wires, I think that perception has changed. Everybody's asking the question is that, what do you want to do with that energy? And I want to power my TV, I want to power my radio, I want to have an entertainment system. And so I think there's a new way of looking at energy access. So I think policy has been a big thing, and it's just driven a lot of things. I think in terms of just the other interesting things that I see is that if you remember at the Dakar conference in 2012, I think it was the board member from Greenlight Planet said is that if quality is king, distribution is God, yeah, with all due respect. And I think that really stands true today. I think it's a more sophisticated business now. As I think, as Mansour has said, the consumers are more demanding. And I think the key to success now is really getting good distributors. And getting good distributors, not from a distribution perspective, but I think what's clear now is that these companies, the major companies, do not have an infinite capacity to absorb equity. And so I think the key for them to growth is establishing good distributors, and good distributors are those distributors that can also have the capacity to be able to, again, attract the financing that is needed to scale. So I think I really like the fact that I think we've seen a lot of disaggregation in terms of now companies looking out for good distributors. I think we have some splendid examples, I think, in West Africa, where I think the partnerships are with some of our FMCG companies who are distributing dry cell batteries. And these companies in their own right are pretty big companies. So I think that transformation, I think, is one that we have seen. And maybe lastly, maybe just representing a segment of the market that's not here today, is, I would say, companies from China. And I think as Lighting Global, we've been spending a lot of time in terms of just exploring what it is that we can be able to leverage the capacity of China in terms of production. But I think, as you also in the presentation today, I think some of those companies control about 72% market share. So it's important for us to start looking at how we can be able to address, because some of those companies really do not make good quality products. And so we've been trying to sweep upstream and try and understand these companies and try and see whether we can engage them and try and at least bring them into the fold of quality verified products. And a couple of interesting things that I think are game changers that I saw in my view. I think one is that you have these huge, big PV companies, PV module manufacturers, that are beginning to take the view that I think the distributed solar is an interesting space. So I think they are beginning to really ask the right questions in terms of what does this market look like. So I think they'll be coming, and these huge companies, I think, have the capacity to bring scale. I think I've also seen a greater focus on brand, because I think previously these companies were viewing themselves as largely suppliers, but I think there's now a shift towards them viewing themselves as brand developers. And I think to Mansour's, I think very interesting partnerships that they're forging.
Okay.
And I think one I've seen is where they are really working with some of the EPC contractors who will be some of their local distributors. So I think that whole issue of partnership, the whole issue of distributorship, I think has been a key thing for me in terms of the development of the industry.
Yeah, thank you very much, Itoja. You raise a few interesting points, and suggesting that the growth might more come from the distributors and new distribution partnerships than intrinsically from the manufacturers. You also focus on more Chinese players onto the ground. Traditionally, there's been a perception, whether true or not, it's a myth that I think we need to potentially, or partially a myth that we need to explore more in depth. But there's been a connection with Chinese non-affiliate companies are undercutting the market by coming with lower quality products and not serving their customer very well. And what I think what you're saying, they're stepping up their game, they're improving. But bringing it back to your very first point, that policy environments have changed. How is that related in your view? Is there a role to play for policy in making sure that we're on a level playing field on quality and standards?
I think so too, yeah. So I maybe got your question differently. I think so. Because I think generally, if you ask anybody who has a quality verified products, they'll tell you that they have a premium of about 30 to 35%. Now, if you're dealing with the base of the pyramid and you're trying to command a premium of 35%, that's really tough work. And and you're comparing yourself with somebody who really shouldn't be in the market. So I think as the policies come up, I think a greater emphasis now should be on enforcement. Because I think once you enact a policy and then you really don't enforce it, then you create this uneven playing field of where you have people now who are constantly undercutting. And then you have these corporate companies that are really trying to do the right thing and trying to bring in the products and pay all the whatever is needed. So I think, or even adhere to whatever standards there are. But I think the other one, I think maybe be a duty and VAT one that I think maybe Engineer Njoroge might cover that in his presentation. But I think that's the other policy, I think, framework that in my view has really helped the market. The countries or the regions that have waived duty and VAT are doing significantly better than others. If you look at the same price of a product in East Africa sells at 30% less than what it does in West Africa, primarily on account of duty and VAT. So I think there's an opportunity for, I think, the regions, particularly in West Africa, to be able to kind of emulate what has been done in other regions that are pretty successful.
Thank you very much, Itoja. Then let's look to Engineer Njoroge and see if you have a response to that. Kenya, I think, has been a leader in this space for a long time and really set an example of how to create a positive and enabling environment. And I think you'd like to speak to that, but perhaps you also like to pick up the challenge that Itoja gives to you. Also in Kenya, perhaps you can do more on enforcement of quality and on measures such as VAT and import duty waivers.
Thank you. Let me start by saying that Kenya is a global leader in adoption of off-grid solar technology, principally facilitated by very innovative and regulatory environment, very enabling fiscal regime, and obviously with abundant prevalence of solar energy potential. Knowing that Kenya is crossed by equator, we do have very good conductivity that creates very high potential of solar energy. At the same time, because of that very innovative policy and the regulatory environment, we have had a very good mix of energy, where most of our energy comes from the green sources, led by geothermal, hydro, wind, a bit of biomass, and solar. When I look at the numbers, I do see that the energy consumption from green sources has now peaked at almost 95%, although the capacity is 70%. Due to the high utilization of the renewable sources, we are able to have energy reaching at 95%. That in itself is a testimony of our passion for green energy. And of course, solar, being green, is one area which we have very much concentrated on. Off-grid energy has a key role in our electrification strategy, and this is a blueprint that we devised way back in 2017. And by December 2018, about 700,000 off-grid connections had already been achieved. When we launched the Kenya National Electrification Strategy in December 2018, we recognized the tremendous impacts of off-grid energy solutions, which set out to electrify about 1.1 million households in very many counties, about 14 of them, which we refer to as underserved, mainly because of their very long distance from the grid areas. The electrification strategy lays actions for achieving universal electricity access, which we target to achieve by the year 2022 by either grid solution or off-grid solution. The off-grid solutions are already playing a very powerful role, a very significant input into our efforts, and that is why we have been able to achieve access of more than 70% through the use of both grid and off-grid solutions. And the Kenya National Electrification Strategy also highlights the crucial role that the private sector will continue to play in providing off-grid solutions. Just as we do have quite a very heavy participation, I think our capacity has about 35% contribution from the private sector players. This particular solution of off-grid, which we have developed with the World Bank, that is the government of Kenya in conjunction with the World Bank, focuses on using private sector participants so that we can be able to fast-track the access. We target about 35,000 connections through 121 mini-grids and about 1.96 million connections as standalone solar home systems. And as the previous speakers have said, a lot of this work is ongoing. A lot of it has already been done. As a policy, the government also recognized that in spite of the past electrification achievements, there are some areas across the country which will remain without electricity access if we do not address or utilize these off-grid solutions. And that's why we came up with a very unique product, Kenya Off-Grid Access Project, or KOSAP, which has been designed to address these challenges. And this is a unique product, a partnership of the government of Kenya and the World Bank, and with very meaningful and significant participation by the private sector. And the Kenya Off-Grid Solar Access Project is a flagship project of the Ministry of Energy, financed by the World Bank, aimed at providing electricity and clean cooking solutions in those remote, low-density and traditionally underserved areas of the country, which targets to electrify about 1.3 million people in the 14 underserved countries through private sector delivery of solar off-grid products. I think that tells you that our policy focuses on participation of the private sector. It's facilitative. We got very good fiscal regime, and we believe that this is going to be a success.
Thank you very much, Engineer Njoroge. Now, you've been in this space, the electrification space yourself for a very long time. In a previous life, you were director of KPLC. So you've seen a lot of development on the role of off-grid in the electrification strategy. How do you view it yourself? Do you think that in the end this is a transition technology that where every household eventually will need to be connected, or do you think it can grow with larger off-grid systems, productive use appliances? Where do you think the trend could stop or could go towards?
I think my experience in the sector is that we have always done better than in the past. We have always tried to improve. Yes, we do have private sector participation, and what COSAP targets to achieve is to increase the number of participants, especially in the private sector. And some of the products that we have are very facilitative. Considering the remoteness of these areas, the vagaries of accessing these areas, the COSAP product recognizes the hardships of those areas and tries to encourage, catalyze, and facilitate the private sector so that we can be able to do much more than what we have done in the past. Looking at the historical development of the sector in terms of access rate, and looking also at the recent developments, we recognize that we have been on a very, very sustainable and improving path of electrification.
Okay, so we can have conversations, perhaps not here, but off stage with you about extra measures that the Kenyan government can take to support the market further, VAT, enforcement of quality. You're open for those conversations?
We are very
to step up further.
We are always very open to listen to the other side and appreciate that you can't know it all. We want to learn from you and to hear you, so that when we come up with the policies, we will input your ideas and what you think can even make you learn faster than at a higher speed than the speed at which you are learning at now.
Thank you. But I think for anything, the leadership of Kenya should be recognized and applauded. Rose, I'm turning to you. Rose, you're the founder and CEO of Mawazo Institute, an institute that tries to promote female leadership by helping them to achieve PhD certificates. You're also research director for the Energy for Growth network, a think tank on energy access. How satisfied are you with the numbers that you saw on stage?
Thanks for inviting me, Koen. Just for a little backstory, up till 2016, I was very much integrated in the sector, and so it's really great to be back among friends and family. Since then, over the past 4 years, I've been working more on supporting women, which is my main job, but then pivoting more to broader power sector issues. So focusing on utilities and grid-connected settings and energy for industrialization and that kind of thing. So for me, when I was reviewing the report, the market trends report, it was quite an interesting I felt myself getting very, very reflective about what has changed in the sector. And so I think my comments, I'll try and kind of break them into two parts. One is this retrospective, and the other is looking forward. And since it's been about 4 years that I have not been very much in the weeds of the sector, it was actually quite refreshing to have a very 30,000 feet view. And I hope that you find those insights useful, because I remember when I was in the trenches with you all, sometimes it's hard to see the big picture. So, okay. In terms of retrospection, I will say, so the last time I was at this conference was in Dubai, slightly more shopping options, but similar group. And, those days we were talking about 20 million units cumulatively in sales. And so when I see in the report we had 200 million, I mean, that's 5 years, that's pretty dramatic, and it fills me with pride to see this growth. Another thing that really surprised me is having people like Dr. Njoroge from the government endorsing the sector. It used to be we're pushing to be integrated in discussions into electrification plans, and for me to come back and see that there's pretty much consensus on that from government players is really, really encouraging, and it makes me happy that, you know, and Kenya, where I'm from, is leading in integrating off-grid in a really meaningful way. That is massive, massive progress. The other thing back then, there was just the beginnings of this discussion of appliances, and that's the work I used to, that was the work I was involved with players like CLASP, Lighting Global, and others. That was a new topic, and now I think that this idea of appliances and demand-side interventions is also really become entrenched, and that makes me really, really happy. And even pivoting to this productive users, so pushing the demand-side conversation even further. That's been a lot of growth and a lot of progress. Now, in terms of looking forward and what I think are kind of possible opportunities or points of stagnation, or I don't know, inflection points for the sector, looking backwards and then looking forwards. One thing that really struck me is, you know, in Dubai in 2015, everybody was crazy about PAYGO. Everybody was crazy about solar home systems. You know, that was a big thing. And to see in the report that we're not even at 20% yet, I was quite struck by the slow growth of this part of the sector, that we're still very much in the Pica Solar, really, really, really small. This is the bulk. This is still the world that we're trading in. And so for me, this makes me wonder, is there, what is missing? Is it the question, you know, I think affordability issues and these other issues come in, where are we not able to move beyond, you know, in this kind of moving people up the tiers? And then it makes me then think about this pivot to productive users, which is, I think, a really new frontier for the space, and it's one that, you know, moves the space towards enterprises and kind of income-generating activities. I will pause to say I liked what Kat said in the previous panel about there is so much impact. Having a light is an impactful thing, and I think the 60 decibels report showed that like, you know, it's not the way we measure impact has to be broadened. But if this sector really wants to enter and play in this productive user space, I think drawing lessons from the sticking points for the larger systems, the solar home systems, you know, that we haven't been able to even penetrate that section. I think there's a lot to think about how this sector will be able to move into the productive users. I'm really impressed by the work that people like CLASP are doing to stimulate new technologies and new applications, but then in terms of the customers, what can they afford? Who are these people who can take on these productive use appliances? How will that work is a question that I often ask myself. And then finally, I think that over the next decade, there's a little bit of an identity crisis that brewing in the sector. Some of what I hear about, you know, over 70% of the sector are the non-affiliates that are not even in this room. Most of the investment in the sector is concentrated in 10 companies. You know, I think, where does the sector fit vis-a-vis the grid, mini grids? I think that these are discussions that we've never really been able to jump into fully, and that should be an important part of the discussions about looking forward. What does the next decade look like for this sector? So these are just some of the things I was thinking about, but certainly I'm really proud of all the progress, and I'm really looking forward to being invited back at the Gogla 2030 in a very exotic location. To appoint some more.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rose. Sorry for the little bit of a distraction behind your back. Just learned that the president is on his way. Now, finally, hopefully. We have a few more minutes to round off. Rose, I think you made some very interesting points about recognizing the growth, but not leaning back. There's so much more that we can do, and we can learn from the sticking points in the past. Leslie, I want to turn over to you because you have a slightly different angle, slightly different background also, a more technical background, and you run, as CEO of Angaza, you run a software company in this space. What are the points that you picked up, and can I ask you, sorry, to summarize it in 2 or 3 minutes?
Sure. Got to get ready for the president's arrival. So yeah, thank you, Koen. I think what I really want to touch upon is the digitization of the software industry, of the solar industry specifically. If I think back just 2 years ago to when we were in Hong Kong convening you really didn't see a lot of that IT sophistication that you see now that a lot of distributors have. So tying together accounting systems, CRM systems, point of sale into a pretty complex and sophisticated software structure that's allowing these distributors to scale and scale very profitably. So I think that's one of the big changes that we've seen over the last couple years, and it's really unlocking both scale and the ability for these distributors to actually have that long-term relationship with the consumer. It makes a ton of business sense from the distributor's perspective because they spent the money to acquire that consumer, and it's not just about that first product they might sell, which might be a solar home system, but it's about then that next product they might sell, a home appliance, and the next product, which could be a solar water pump. So really this concept of unlocking consumer lifetime value has become a big part of the conversation of this industry, and I don't think that was where we were at 5 years ago. It was purely just let's sell as many products as possible and not necessarily go really deep with each particular client that we serve. It's very exciting from the consumer's perspective as well because they're getting much better after-sales support than they did 5, 10 years ago. Distributors are realizing the importance of building their brand loyalty in these markets, again, increasing these upsells to the consumers. And in many cases, we are taking off-grid, completely unelectrified homes and then making them smart homes from day one that they're getting energy. And this really is benefiting consumers to help the products actually operate how they want to operate. And from a digital payments perspective, we're helping build credit histories for consumers and again, unlocking additional economic opportunities for them. The last point I'll make, because I know we're running out of time here, is just I think it's really interesting how much the off-grid solar industry has contributed to the growth of adjacent industries such as banking and telecom. And vice versa, benefited from the growth of these adjacent industries. So as we think about, again, the growth and the future of the off-grid solar industry, we have to also look at the growth of these adjacent industries.
Thank you very much, Leslie. So consumer lifetime experiences, much better after sales, all supported by improving technology and better business models. And that helping the off-grid industry to contribute to other industries, adjacent industries, probably opening new routes to partnerships. So thank you very much. Joven, 30 seconds for you, which you promised would be enough for you to respond and sum up a few things.
Okay, I'll speed up. Just to say that for us, universal access to energy is achievable through a combination of on-grid, microgrid, and solar home system. So what we can bring to the industry is industrialization, financial stability, and make it sustainable. It has to be a self-funded industry. And I think what we can bring also is a bit everything that my colleagues here, everyone has been saying about the needs of the industry, what's lacking also. We've got a unique platform. We can provide the software. We can provide the hardware. We present in 9 countries. There's 54 countries in Africa. Whoever wants to do it, we're happy to do partnerships. We're happy to give access to our system. And I think in terms of regulation, when we talk about it, it's not about customs. I think these things we've gone through. It's about the way governments have to look at the industry. It has to be seen as a least cost of access to energy rather than a least cost of production perspective. And I'll finish on that.
Thank you very much. Maybe then as my summary, rather than you giving me your last takeaway, we talked about the massive development in the industry. We talked about the massive challenges still lying ahead. We talked about having building blocks to take on the challenge for the next decade and beyond. But also that we still need to do it and need to work together, build those partnerships, forge those partnerships, and realize it. And still we've got our work cut out. With that, I'd like to thank very much this panelist. It's been a bit rushed, which I regret, but we have a great opportunity coming after us. So thank you very much, and I'd like to ask for a round of applause for the panel.
May we now all be upstanding for His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya. Welcome, Your Excellency, sir. Thank you. We settle down for the national anthem and the East African community anthem as we stand. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, representatives of governments and stakeholders in the off-grid solar industries, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, I'm expecting to invite Mr. Carlos Felipe, the country director of World Bank, who will make some brief introductory remarks. Your Excellency, on behalf of all the stakeholders, welcome Mr. Felipe, karibuni. Mr. Felipe will make some brief welcoming remarks and introductory remarks on behalf of all the stakeholders, after which Cabinet Secretary Charles Ketel will invite Your Excellency to address the conference. Bwana Felipe, karibu.
Thank you very much. Good morning. We're very excited to be here in this fabulous forum and expo. We just walked through the expo and saw some very exciting news. But let me give you a few words of welcome. Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, Honorable Cabinet Secretary for Energy for Kenya, Ministers of Energy for Burundi, Chad, and Pakistan, Deputy Minister of Energy for Sierra Leone, Permanent Secretaries, all representatives of the off-grid solar industry, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. As you know, it is fitting that this forum returns to Kenya after 10 years of achievements of the off-grid industry, and we are very happy with this. Kenya has become a renewable energy leader and the fastest electrifying country in the world. The off-grid solar sector's contribution has been absolutely formidable towards this achievement, and Kenyan government's collaboration with the private sector has been exemplary in delivering innovative technologies and business models that serve all Kenyans. I am particularly pleased that these efforts have included those living in the most remote parts of the country. The World Bank Group is proud to be supporting the government of Kenya, in addition to other critical development partners, especially in its announced goal to reach universal electrification by 2020. And we are also working with other governments across Africa and around the globe to replicate the success of the Kenyan experience. We have supported the government in the preparation of the National Electrification Strategy that was launched by the Honorable Minister in December of 2018. This is a framework that has allowed Kenya to determine the most suitable mix of electrification solutions, and off-grid solar has emerged as a key element of the electrification roadmap. We commend the government of Kenya and some of the other governments gathered here today on their commitment to leverage off-grid solar technologies to accelerate progress towards universal access. In response to the pace set by the government of Kenya, that's running fast. We know Kenya is a country of runners, and we hope the other governments present will catch up. We are planning to address the emerging financing needs, and we continue to provide the government of Kenya and other governments funding for off-grid solar electrification. For example, we have the $225 million regional off-grid electrification project, the ROGEP, which is building an enabling environment and supporting access to finance for off-grid businesses in 19 West African countries. And here in Kenya, we're very proud we are supporting the government in implementing the Kenya Off-Grid Solar Access Project, the COSAP, which provides $150 million to expand the off-grid solar market to remote regions that otherwise would remain unserved, benefiting households, microenterprises, schools, and health clinics. These projects have successfully demonstrated the use of public funds to leverage private sector innovation and financing to achieve impact. Over the last 4 years, we've committed over $1 billion of financing, $1 billion in financing for off-grid solar electrification, most of it in sub-Saharan Africa, and we are happy to see that demand from governments, led by Kenya, for this support keeps growing. So to end, for the World Bank Group is both a global knowledge partner and a provider of financing solutions of national electrification program. Our aim is to reach the over 800 million people still living without electricity around the globe, and particularly the about 600 million of those that live in sub-Saharan Africa. These people, I want to remind you, are often the poorest, the most vulnerable, the most remote, and in some cases, those that live in areas or countries that are affected by conflict and violence and fragility. So reaching them is an urgent development imperative, and we are committed to work in collaboration with private sector, civil society, development partners to get this done. And I hope that you can all join us in this noble cause. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, the World Bank Country Director, Felipe, the Regional Director, Eastern Africa for IFC, the President of GUKLA, distinguished guests, delegates, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Your Excellency, I want on behalf of the team who organized this function to really welcome you sincerely for finding time to be here. This forum is such an important forum for us as a country, Your Excellency. And we thank the World Bank and the team for honoring us for the second time. The first time we had such a forum, Your Excellency, was 2010. The last forum was held in Hong Kong. And indeed, I'm happy that the delegates who have managed to be with us is over 1,400, Your Excellency, from 68 countries, 20 governments. So we want to take this opportunity to welcome all the delegates to this forum. And we as a country, we are really happy to have you, and we learn through experience. I will not say much because, Your Excellency, this is your day, and we will remain so that we can interact with the delegates who are here. But allow me, Your Excellency, the family of Energy, just to introduce you by standing, because I'm talking on your behalf. Maybe you can stand so that you can be acknowledged. The family of Energy, you know yourself, from Kenya. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Lastly, Your Excellency, let me recognize the Deputy Minister from Sierra Leone. You are welcome to Kenya. I don't know where he's seated. It must be, yeah, he's just here. Welcome to Kenya, and feel free. With those few remarks, Your Excellency, let me take this opportunity to welcome you so that you can give us your address. Let's be upstanding as we welcome His Excellency.
Thank you very much, Waziri. Please be seated. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by offering an apology for being late. Anyway, my apologies. But let me also say it's a great pleasure to join all of you today at this official opening of the 6th Global Off-Grid Solar Forum and Expo. As the Minister has said, and we have also witnessed, we have noted over 1,000 delegates from 65 countries attending the forum, with a good number of exhibitors who we have seen at the Expo, with some very impressive products. So to all our guests from outside Kenya, we say welcome, and please feel very much at home amongst your brothers and sisters here in Nairobi and in Kenya at large. So ladies and gentlemen, evidences abound that to realize sustained social economic development, provision of sufficient and clean electricity is without doubt a critical enabler. As a government, we are well aware that the Big Four agenda that we have set for ourselves of universal health care, food security and nutrition, manufacturing for job creation, as well as affordable housing, will not be achieved unless we provide affordable and reliable power supply. So this forum is therefore not just timely, but an important part of Kenya's development agenda. It affords us the opportunity to survey the horizon, to brainstorm together and share ideas and experiences towards what I believe is our shared goal of achieving universal energy access, with a particular focus on off-grid solar solutions. Let me also say that the forum has come at a time when Kenya has been recognized as the world's second largest standalone solar market after India, and we have achieved this feat on the basis of 6.2 million verified sales of solar products since 2009, and 14 million people accessing improved energy through off-grid solar solutions between the year 2006 and 2018. In fact, in 2019, we continued this upward trend, achieving 2 million sales of solar products. This tremendous growth in the uptake of off-grid solar solutions is an integral part of my administration's strategy towards the realization of universal access to electricity by the year 2020. Indeed, since I assumed office in 2013, we have more than tripled the number of Kenyans with access to electricity, from 2.2 million in 2013 to to 7.2 million today. Ladies and gentlemen, while this growth in itself is impressive, we also recognize that there remains a vast untapped potential and room for even greater growth. Through the Kenya National Electrification Strategy that we launched in 2018, my administration is targeting the attainment of an additional 1.9 million solar-based connections. And to that end, the government, in partnership with the World Bank, has committed Kenya shillings 15 billion or $150 million under the Kenya Off-Grid Solar Access Project to improve energy access to 1.14 counties with low electrification rates. Through this project, we are targeting to provide energy to 250,000 households and more than 800 public facilities in these 14 counties. To achieve our electrification program through off-grid solutions, we also, as a government, recognize the importance of partnering with you, the private sector. And in this regard, we as a government have provided an enabling environment for private sector investors. Indeed, we have given import duty exemptions on a range of solar products to ensure both profitability for investors as well as affordability and high-quality products for our consumers. This, I have no doubt, has gone a long way in instilling public confidence in solar products. We are also supporting numerous homegrown innovative solutions and products, such as pay-as-you-use and models, and locally manufactured solar solutions geared towards the needs of our farmers and also our rural communities. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, allow me to emphasize the fact that the benefits of this forum and the Expo are global and not limited to Kenya alone. So I call upon all of us assembled in Nairobi today to, at this moment in history, configure our activities and operating models so as to reduce the pace of climate change and to mitigate against its impacts. Your discussions, your innovations, your resolutions at this forum, I believe, will go a long way towards ensuring universal access to affordable, reliable, clean, but more importantly, sustainable, modern energy to every nation in our globe. So I just want to conclude by first and foremost thanking all our development partners, taking a special note of the World Bank and the IFC for everything that they have done to support us in our action. To also thank our private sector players. Again, without your support, we would not be where we are today. And my commitment to all of you that as a government, as a country, we will continue to work very closely with you as we try and deepen the penetration of clean, affordable, reliable energy that helps us improve the lives of our people while at the same time protecting our very vulnerable world. I wish you all very fruitful deliberations, and let me also take this opportunity to encourage our friends who have come from other parts of the world to spare some time. Kenya is not Nairobi. Kenya is beaches. Kenya is wonderful flora and fauna. Kenya is wonderful landscapes across different parts. Kenya is diverse culture. Our national parks just outside Nairobi. Don't mind what our newspapers say. You go and see it for yourselves. Our beaches, karibuni sana. Enjoy yourselves, work hard, but take time to meet your brothers and sisters in Kenya. With those few remarks, enjoy yourselves and have a wonderful time. Thank you very much.
After the national anthem, sir, we will most humbly request for a photo opportunity at the entrance of this hall. May we be all standing for the national anthem. The rest of us remain standing as those in the photo kindly we move through this door so that we have that opportunity.